Welcome to the GameDay Playbook, presented by FanFood, a discussion around how leaders are transforming the sports and live entertainment industry by leveraging technology to enhance the fan experience and operate GameDay more efficiently. I'm your host, Rob Cressy, and joining me today is Jim Irving, founder at Fanview. Jim, super excited to have you on the show.
Great to be here, Rob.
Can you give a quick overview on who you are and what you do?
Yeah, of course. So as you mentioned, my name is Jim Irving. I'm founder and MD of Fanview. Fanview, we set up about 3.5 years ago with the focus on being the segue between sports and eSports. So obviously, I'm sure your viewers and listeners are kind of aware that eSports is growing exponentially. And there's a lot of creative technology, a lot of new things happening in that world. And we wanted to take some of that tech and some of that thinking and apply that to sport and vice versa. There's a lot of stuff that's being done in sport, which is also applicable to eSports. So, we kind of learn from those sectors and we try and implement new ways of working, new types of technology, and really kind of set the bar as high as possible in terms of creating new types of content and new ways of working.
So can you give an example of how you guys are using technology at this intersection?
Yeah, I mean, I can give you a number of different examples. So a lot of what we're doing at the moment is around data. So in the esports space, we're pulling live data from games, and then we're rendering that data in augmented or virtual reality environments, on broadcast, on streams, in a whole variety of ways to help tell the story. So a lot of esports can be very, very complicated, difficult for the viewer to understand, and we're trying to simplify that. We're trying to simplify that storytelling so they can really kind of understand that. And then in sport, we're working with a partner called Reaponauts. We're pioneering the use of volumetric scanning. So that's the ability to take hundreds of photographs of an athlete and then stitch those images together to get a really, really high quality photorealistic rendition of that athlete. And the first time the technology was deployed was for the Super Bowl in 2018. So we scanned people like Brady. We've also used it on the Champions League finals for the last 2 years. So we've scanned players from Liverpool and Real Madrid and Tottenham, and we're using those assets in really, really creative ways.
And with that, how do the consumers react? So when you give a forward-thinking technology that they've never experienced before, what is the reaction from the consumer?
Yeah, we get a tremendous reaction. So on the again, using the Champions League as an example, UEFA deployed those assets on their social media platforms, and they got a huge increase in engagement levels. UEFA as a federation who runs tournaments, they have a huge social media following, but younger fans especially really kind of love the use of player images. And the idea is to work with UEFA's partners, the broadcasters, to bring this technology to our TV screens as well as to kind of social and digital channels. So and use it in more and more creative ways. So for things like, virtual assistant referee, instead of video assistant referees, we're looking at things like virtual assistant referee. We're looking at changing the way that sports analyze. So, instead of being limited by camera angles, we want to move into the world of virtual analysis so that you can look at an NFL game in a completely different way, or look at a basketball game, or look at a soccer match in a completely different way.
So one thing that's on the Fanview website says you guys are creating the most compelling fan experiences on the planet. So what is foundational to creating the most compelling fan experiences on the planet? Take us a little bit into your mindset.
So I guess that's really, that kind of leads on from what I was just saying in the sense that, the reason that we called the company Fanview is that we wanted fans of any sport to view that sport in a totally different way. That was kind of the logic behind naming the company Fanview. So, so to not be limited by, just cameras and, traditional kind of broadcast technology. But actually, imagine if you could be sat in Singapore, but, actually stand, on the pitch as a Premier League game is happening, and be able to view that game from a totally different angle. So, for the last 50, 100 years, since the advent of television, there's been a fundamental physical restriction on the ability for fans. You're either at the stadium or you're watching it on TV or you're listening it to the radio. Now, okay, you can stream it on the internet, but you're still limited by a screen. We want to give fans a completely new perspective on how they view games, and really, to really see it from, from a pitcher's perspective, or to see it from a batter's perspective, or to see it from a quarterback's perspective. Really, really give them see what Brady sees when he's playing a game for the Patriots, which is something quite unique.
So I love this idea, but I'm curious how you get the adoption side of things. So I even think a few years ago when 3D TVs came out, and they're like, you're going to put on this headset and you're going to view this from a completely different perspective, but it never really caught on. So even though the concept seemed cool, it didn't really work from a mass adoption standpoint. So what do you guys do to not just be so niche that it's like super cool for a few people, whereas it can be a little bit more broad? Because I love everything that you guys are talking about bringing something new to the table, but how do you think about adoption with this?
I mean, it's a really good question. And the simple answer is that, so myself and my colleagues who kind of set the company up, we come from a content background. So what often happens with technology like 3D is that the people that lead it are technologists, and they're good people, but they don't necessarily know how to tell a story. And the coverage of sport is about telling a story. And if you stand back and think about 3D, does 3D have a kind of fundamental? Does 3D fundamentally increase the way that you kind of view a sport? Now, you might argue, yeah, it gives you a new perspective, but then wearing glasses, is that going to have a positive or negative, impact on the way that you view sport? And I think it would have a very detrimental impact. So I think 3D is not gone. I think once 3D without glasses really, really takes hold, once you can view 3D without having to wear glasses or, the restriction of the technology, I think it has a huge role to play. But the thing with virtual technology is that you've suddenly got the ability to put a fan in a position that they've never seen before. So a lot of the virtual coverages of sport that we've seen today is basically sticking a camera in a goal or sticking a camera behind a net. That's not a great story. Nobody's going to watch a whole basketball game looking at a camera from behind a net. But actually, if you can give them the perspective of LeBron James, then yeah, they will love that experience. And so having a sound, creative, content-driven strategy that sits behind the technology is the reason why it will succeed.
Yeah, and one thing you guys mentioned on your website that really stood out to me, which sort of dovetails on this, is creating content with the end consumer in front of mind. And while that seems, of course, that should be the case, I don't believe the majority of brands create that way, because so often our brand is self-serving, where it says, buy what I'm selling, buy what I'm selling. And at some point, as you're seeing with the way that social media and content creation and community building is evolving, the brands now need to tell stories in a variety of ways. And at the center of that has to be the consumer and what you can do to deliver value to them first, and everything else becomes secondary.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, you have to strike a balance, because at the end of the day, this is a business, sport is a business. But a lot of technology is driven by, a commercial imperative. So if you think about 4K, so we're really, really starting to see a big adoption of 4K. But what is driving the adoption of 4K? Is it consumers wanting better and better technology? Do consumers want more and more pixels? Yeah, I mean, if potentially they might want higher and higher quality, but in most people's homes, is the quality of HD good enough? Possibly. I think, to improve the coverage of sport, we need higher frame rates because we need, smoother pictures, smoother images of balls, flying through the air so that you can see the beauty and the intricacies of sport. We don't necessarily need 4 or 5 times the resolution that we've got today, but, higher frame rates just means, you need more infrastructure to coverage of sport, and it doesn't sell more TVs. So instead of higher frame rates, we get more pixels. But I'm not sure that's the right answer. But, as I say, more pixels means everybody has to get a new TV, which means that, some big manufacturers make a lot more money. So, but eventually, the consumer's desire to see sport in fresh and new, exciting ways will hopefully win out.
What are the biggest challenges you see for companies right now when it comes to the intersection of sports and technology?
Oh, well, I think it's the pace of tech. I think it's being strategic in your investments because the pace of technology is moving so fast that you can't do everything. So you have to think very, very carefully. So as a sport or as a broadcaster or as a platform, you have to think about, what are the things that my consumers, what are the things that my fans want? And you have to focus in on that. I mean, the other interesting conversation, we have a lot of conversations with broadcasters about eSports and how does eSports fit into their ecosystem. And it's a difficult question to answer because, eSports is very, very different to sports in terms of the way that it's monetized, the way that it's distributed. And so it doesn't quite fit into the marketplace that we have for sport. And so there's going to be a huge amount of turmoil and change in the industry over the next 5 years. And there'll be some big winners, but there will be some big losers as well.
What do you think about let's call it the overall mass adoption of esports? So we know that it's so big, but it also seems like it's this gigantic niche that there's a lot of people who love this, but then when it comes to mainstream, there's so many people who don't understand it because they say, well, Jim, this is just video games. But then you look and they're filling arenas and they've got these giant tournaments. And then you look and it's on Twitch and streaming and there's just so much attention there. So what do you think about sort of the growth of esports in terms of how it's going to be moving forward from a mass adoption standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing is that, I mean, funny enough, we spend a lot of time, and it seems quite simple, but we spend a lot of time with our clients ensuring that they understand the definition of what esports is. So, esports is effectively a subset of gaming. So, gaming is effectively the pastime of playing video games, and there are now reportedly, depends, where you source your data, but there are now more people playing video games on a regular basis than there are people playing sport. It's about 2.5, I think, 2.6 billion people that are kind of gamers or meet the definition of a gamer. Esports, there's about 450 million esports fans globally. So they are about 20-25% of the gaming market. So, the number of kind of esport enthusiasts or esports fans is a lot lower than gamers. And when you're devising a strategy for esports, it's important to understand the difference and understand who you're trying to target, because a lot of people think it's just a one size fits all, and it's not. In terms of how you capture the hearts and minds of gaming and esports fans in the same way that you capture the hearts and minds of sports fans. You have to build heroes, you have to tell great stories, you have to understand who is the best and why they're the best, and who is the worst and why they're the worst. You have to create competition. You have to create, drama. That's why there are a lot of parallels between the two. And if you're able to do those things successfully, you'll have a very positive impact within the esports or the gaming sector.
What opportunities do you see right now in the intersection of the sports and technology industry?
The big opportunities. Well, I mean, as I say, we think that augmented, mixed reality and virtual reality are huge opportunities for sport. As I said to you earlier, the way that sport is produced has not changed hugely. I mean, we had had color, then we had high definition. Now we've kind of got 4K. We've got kind of improvements in Dolby. But fundamentally, you've still got multiple cameras in an arena, and you're cutting between those cameras in ever more sophisticated ways, and you're rolling in replays, and then you're making that content available, on a variety of different platforms. I think the two major changes that will happen and have started to happen is, one, the control of how you view that sport will be much more at the user level. So, whereas today, the choice is made for you by the director and the production team at the venue, they will, in essence, give you the control as you sit at home. And for some people who want that control, they'll be able to watch the sport in a variety of different ways. Others will just want to watch it as a single feed. But as where we see the biggest opportunity is in the virtual creation of sport, because that does give you, potentially it gives you a whole new perspective, and will be one of the big drivers in terms of technology adoption, I think, over the next decade.
I dig everything that you're saying, specifically from how forward-thinking you are. So if we were to try and generalize, someone's listening to this right now is like, man, I love what Jim's jamming about. Can you take us a little bit into your mindset and say, all right, if someone has nothing to do with what you're doing, but fundamentally the way that you see the business and technology and sports world, do you have some advice or some nuggets of wisdom that you can pass along that says, listen, if you want to be successful in sports or in using technology, giving some words of wisdom to them?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think just always be really, really clear. So, I guess it depends if it's someone who wants to build a career, or if, that would be, or if you're talking about people that want to invest. I mean, that, those are sort of two very different use cases. But in both cases, try and understand kind of where the market is moving to. Try and understand. Think about it at the simplest term. Think about it from the fan's perspective. And ultimately, what we want to do is you want to be able to recreate the experience of the stadium at home. Is maybe I think is kind of one key strategy. In the UK, we have Old Trafford. Manchester United is a global brand, but you've only got 70-odd thousand people that every 2 weeks can go and watch a game. And yet, certainly Manchester United claim that 1 in every 10 people in the world is a Man United fan. That's their stat. That isn't mine. So, there are a lot more people that are Man United fans and a lot more people that are Man United fanatics that will never, ever, sadly, ever get to Old Trafford in the north of England. So how do you kind of create that experience, or better still, how do you go beyond that experience and give them, an incredibly powerful experience that they can do from their own home, and just think, and then try and then break that down into, okay, if that's the goal in 10 years' time, what do we need to do today? What do we need to do tomorrow? What do we need to do next week, next month, next year? What are the stepping stones that we need to do to kind of get to that point and work from there? Kind of break it down into sizable chunks and think about, how you get to that point. But if you want to be successful in sport and sport technology, you really have to think about what the fan will want both now and in the future.
I dig it. Last question for you. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you think would be beneficial to the audience?
No, I think we've kind of covered a lot in a very short period of time. No, just to say that I think that, the evolution, as I said, I would just reiterate that the evolution of technology is very, very fast at the moment, and that's only going to get quicker. And it's going to be, it's going to be an exciting decade. We're on the dawn of a new decade, and especially, having a Rugby World Cup coming in the next few weeks, and also an Olympics in Tokyo. The Japanese have a phenomenal track record of innovating in technology terms, and I think having major events in those markets will, if anything, accelerate the speed of change, over the next 10 years. So, lots to look forward to.
Jim, I really appreciate all the insight that you dropped. Where can people connect with you?
Yeah, by all means. So you can. Our website is really simple. It's just Fanview, FANVIEW, one word.co. And on there, if you go to our contacts page, there are lots of contact details. Please, if your viewers and listeners have any questions, just ask them. Please get in touch, and we're always happy to talk to people.
And as always, I would love to hear from you about this episode. Did it cause you to think or take action? You can hit up FanFood on Twitter at FanFoodOnDemand, or on Instagram at FanFoodApp, or on LinkedIn. And as always, you can hit me up on all social media platforms by searching Rob Cressy.
It's going, it's in there. A new Major League record.